In a world that is so busy and fast paced, it can be easy to feel left behind and forgotten. Especially during hard times, it can feel like nobody cares or even sees what you're going through. And sometimes we even ask the question, where's God in all this? And that's why I think it's so important to remember the way that one woman describes our God in Genesis 16. There, a woman named Hagar was a servant to Abraham and Sarah, and she was expecting a child while Sarah was still barren. And so, out of envy, Sarah treated her so harshly that Hagar finally had to flee into the desert, not knowing what to do next as she was all alone and in distress with no one to help in her affliction. But in her desert of distress, it says God found Hagar by a well of water. And there he promised that she would be taken care of, that she would bear a son, and that that son would grow into a multitude of descendants. And in response, it says in verse 13, she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, El Roy, the God who sees me. Even in our lowest moments, when we're in the desert of distress and all others have forsaken us, El Roy is the God who sees us. He sees our burdens. He sees our hearts and our concerns and fears and worries. He finds us in our greatest point of need and rescues us like a shepherd carrying home the lost sheep. Or like Jesus said in Luke 19:10, I came to seek and save the lost. And throughout his ministry, Jesus proved that. He found the forgotten people of society, the poor, the oppressed, the weak, the blind, the stranger, people who were looked down on, the sinners and tax collectors. And he even found a woman all alone and distressed beside a well, just like Genesis 16. And he not only helped them in this life, but he gave them hope for life eternal. And so God, through his Son, saw the needs of all people and rescued them from their affliction and distress. But God not only sees through the eyes of his Son, he sees also through the eyes of you and me. James 1:27 says, true and undefiled religion in the sight of God the Father is this, to look upon orphans and widows and their distress. So God is not only the one who sees me in my own affliction, but the God who sends me. He sends you and me to be his eyes on the ground and to carry out his vision for the world, to look upon the poor, the oppressed, the orphan, the widow, the stranger, those who are anxious and worried and hurting, to find the people who are stuck in that desert of distress and see how I can help them now in this life and give them hope for life eternal. Because that's what God has done for each of us. He turned and looked away from his own Son on the cross so that he could look upon us when we needed him the most. He is El Roy, the God who sees me.